Hello, everyone. Welcome to Writing Quest. My name is Brenden Pugh. Today we have a very special guest with us. We have Eric July, the creator of Rippaverse Comics. Big thank you to him being on the show. So welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother, and I appreciate you. Big time for having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. And we're in the same time zone, so the timing is actually like we're on the same clock because
Perfect.
I've interviewed someone over in Australia, and that was like a total trip to figure that out.
Yeah, those guys over there are in like a completely different day, man.
Yeah. Well, for those who don't know you, a lot of people do, but for those who don't, why don't you tell us just a brief kind of how this all happened and where you got started?
Right. Yeah, been a creator for my entire life, mainly floated around as far as writing is concerned in the music industry. I've been a part of a couple of successful bands and made it as a ghostwriter as well for several different genres. And going up into the big comic book guy, I've been a comic book guy my entire life, and just more or less a typical story. I wanted to be a part of the solution. I used to gripe a lot, people that watch me on YouTube, about like the state of the industry in various ways, and I figured, I got a little capital that I've saved up. I've also, again, this is something that I really wanted to do. If I was going to do it, I wanted to do it right. And I figured I'd start my own comic book company. And it took off, obviously, Rippaverse Comics in 2022. And since then, we've put out like 12 titles, spanning across 12 different books, and growing really, really fast. Created a little creator-owned wing as well called Rippersverse, which is starting to get off the ground. And yeah, we're just we're a comic book company that really focuses not so much on the B2B, which is how most distribution works in the comic book industry, focusing on getting it in shops. Though we do sell to comic book shops, our main focus is going directly to the reader. And that's been like kind of core foundation of our company. And considering like things that are happening right now in the distribution game, like with Diamond, it was actually
I've got many stories.
Yeah, I can imagine. Can imagine. So I'm really glad that we went the route that we did, and I'm more than anything, I am blessed to be in the situation that I'm in, able to just wake up and do what I love every day, and that's create.
Yeah, that's awesome. I got to tell you, so I kind of found you sometime in the middle of the Isom 1 campaign. Somehow it popped up on my socials, and I was like, hey, that looks interesting. And and I was like, yeah, this is cool. Ordered it, all that stuff. But then where you really sold me was with Backwards, because so I'm a musician. I went to school for music. I grew up playing in bands and gigging, all that kind of stuff. Big into pop punk and metal and all that kind of stuff. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, I'm in. You got me with that for sure.
That's awesome. No, it's funny how obviously business related stuff, it's a lot of crossover, right? Between music and comic books, almost a natural crossover in terms of how things are done. But yeah, man, it's been really, really cool to see that there's a lot of people that know me for that, right? First, they knew me for that. That was the only reason why some of them even gave us a shot. And thankfully they're still sticking around as customers, but a lot of that came because of Backwards, right? And the music. So that's awesome to hear that there's another fan of that. That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. So when you wrote Isom 1, one of the things I really want to get into is like a lot of the independent creators I've talked to, are very, they write a book and the path is basically like, put it up on Amazon KDP, and that's like the only thing they can, they're not really sure how else to go forward. Right. So you write Isom 1. Were you always thinking like, I want to do this independently, release it myself, do that whole thing?
Yeah, that was like, if I was going to do it, and then, once I had made the decision that for sure this is something that we're going to do, that was my approach. I was going to do it independently, much like what we did with Backwards. I mean, the only thing, this is actually more independent than Backwards, because though we maintained our publishing and owned everything to help with distribution for the physical copies, we had the help of Stay Sick. And this is just though entirely, there's none of that. There's no distribution deal here. This is all Ripperverse here. But some of that had to do with what I learned from that, and it just how much is just not in your control with stuff like that. And yeah, I wanted to do it independently, and there were a lot of people. I mean, and I don't think I'm saying that to knock them. I just think that for a while there, or for a long time, the industry only knew one or two ways, man. And one of those were obviously handing that element of it off to someone else. And I've been an independent creator for a very long time, and I figured like I can do that. That's something that I can figure out. And the spots where I can't figure it out, I can bring someone on that can for me. So very much like obviously we're a creative company. We're very much the distribution is just as much important to that. So that was something that we wanted to do initially, and we wanted to do before I even really started the company. I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And if we're going to fail, it's going to be on our own terms. And it was no guarantee by any means. Obviously, nobody owes you their money, right? Mm-hmm. So just because I had these big aspirations doesn't mean much if we're putting out something that the audience didn't want or they rejected. So thanks to them and our lovely customers, they loved the way that we did things. And it also, just as far as trying to improve our model, because everything is in our control, we can pivot. We can make the customer buying experience as unique as we possibly can. And that was why we wanted to do it just completely, independent.
Yeah. Well, I think what I really love about what you guys are doing is you're showing people that you don't need all these other, labels and all this other stuff. Because I hear about it all the time about like authors get on Amazon and then Amazon just shuts them down. YouTube, people get on YouTube and YouTube just shuts them down just for whatever reason they decide to do it. And I think we just live in a world now where it's like, you just don't have to. It may be harder. Maybe it's, it's a lot of work. I mean, you guys are working hard, but
every day
it's worth it, because no one can take it away from you. You know what I mean?
And that is the beautiful part of this. And that's what I was kind of alluding to when I talk about like failing kind of on our own terms. So if it didn't work out, it would have been on us, and I can live with that. I can live with, all right, well, I gave it a shot. It didn't work out. Again, thankfully it did, but there was certainly no guarantees. But yeah, you bring up a fantastic point. I mean, going into again what's happening right now with Diamond, and you like what you talked about with these various platforms, and they can just like that. And whether it's a mistake or not, a lot of that all it takes is a day to just really ruin your momentum. Maybe you had eyes that given second, and they decided either their AI or whatever caught something, and they decided to take it off, and then it takes a little bit to try to get that resolved. Well, that could be the difference between a big successful project and like nothing. So for sure, I love that there's people trying to not necessarily just simply trying to copy what we did or what we do, because we're not even necessarily reinventing the wheel here or not attempting to. The fact that people are giving it a shot to try to find an alternative way, and maybe it's not copying our model directly, but they're just trying to find an alternative way to do things on their own and house things that are more in their immediate control. And it's not just about, for sure they can deplatform you and all that. That's for sure a part of it. But it's also about making it unique for your customers and tailor making things for your customers. And just we're always paying attention to like the chats that when we do our streams, we're sending out feedback and or we have like those feedback like loops, I guess if you want to call them that, where our customer can buy something and then we hear back from them. Polls, we send those out. We have obviously our like customer like relations department, and they're dealing with all the customer service aspects of it. And so people are giving us feedback like constantly. And what we can do is take that information and then make an adjustment. Like that's how stuff like the Rippersverse International kind of like a little program that we have for Australia, Canada, and the UK. That's how stuff like that happens. That's how, we're trying to build this like kind of unique. It's not necessarily unique. I know there's other guys like Big Bad toy store, for example, they do their little pile of loot, thing where you can basically buy something and then, delay the shipping. So, you don't have to pay multiple times on shipping. We're looking to try to implement stuff like that. But when you're just working like with a platform and that's it, it's only one, you're kind of beholden to whatever their process is, right? So yeah, it's not even just about deplatforming. I know that's kind of a long, drawn out way to say that you can just make the customer buying, like experience unique, get that direct feedback, and always improve when you do have that type of stuff in your immediate control.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you bring up there about being able to take action. And I'll come back to the diamond thing because that has affected me directly, and I have some interesting stories. So my wife and I own multiple small businesses here in the town we're from. And one of the reasons we love it is because you can take action immediately. Mm-hmm. Like I have idea, I take action. Same thing with this. If customers are giving you feedback and you're like, let's fix it now. I remember... a buddy of mine came into the store that we have, and we were talking about rearranging something in the store, whatever. And I just started doing it. And he's like, we're doing it now. I'm like, yeah, we're doing it now. Because we can't, why not? Like, we're just sitting here. And so I just appreciate that mentality because I think that's something that authors and comic book creators in general just can, like, you have that power to just do, The diamond thing is crazy. So we bought this comic book store back in August, and obviously I knew to kind of the retailer game of it.
Right.
And so then we get the thing, they're going through bankruptcy and all that. And all of a sudden my shipments start getting kind of weird.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So now I got customers coming in every week and I'm like, I didn't get a shipment this week. So I don't, so it's
right.
Their issue now affected my business. And I'm like,
bingo.
Nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. No, that's how it works. Right. And it's like one hiccup. And it can just derail everything. So, you're thinking about it, like, obviously from the retailer's standpoint, and, publishers or be it self-publishers or whatever, they're thinking about it from their standpoint, because we've already seen with the whole diamond situation that some, and I hate to hear stuff like that some companies or publishers are just like completely going under. Some of the smaller ones, they're just saying like, well, this is it. It's like, wow, they put everything in their hands, really. And now that just completely got derailed, they're like, what do we do? Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's a threat. It's a threat. It's a threat to happen when you are like, when all your eggs, I hate to use this a more or less a cliche, but are in that one basket there. And it just impacts your entire, like, really your supply chain. And then you really just can't produce. So that was one of the things that I feared. And yeah, we have dealt with, as any company does, with our set of hiccups. But the fact that we just have that flexibility has allowed us to be able to make an adjustment. I mean, I've dealt with that with even printers, right? Where there was a printer that we were working with, for example, at one point, and then it was like something happened with their paper issue or whatever. And that kind of just, I'm like, wait, we need our books. And then I'm like, well, I guess we won't be using you. So there are other options that I got to hurry up and pivot to make something like that happen. And that's what we did. And again, having that flexibility, even if you can't envision it right there that minute, because it's not like I thought that was going to happen when I first started my company, that a printer that we were using, that was going to happen. It's not like I'm thinking about that. But just having that flexibility just allowed us to really get in this position that we're in, where we can make an adjustment. So sure, there might be a delay or two, but it's not just going to completely upend the company.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to circle back a little bit to Isom 1. So about the company. So obviously that exploded and you made like $3 kajillion, and you so were you even expecting that at all? Like,
not even close. I'd be lying to you. I don't care how confident I was. I was confident. I think you have to be, and your work. But I was confident. But $3.7 million, no, I didn't even consider that an option. That was going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, look, man, if we just make our money back in some capacity, I'll be happy, because this is the first book, and that obviously just absolutely exploded. And look, it happened because of a few different reasons. It wasn't just one thing. It was timing. You got all this customer dissatisfaction going on right now, and people are looking at the industry the way that they are. So they're at least more than they ever have really in modern history, considering alternatives to maybe the usual publishers. So we had that going for me. Obviously, I made sure that just as far as customer facing, everything was as polished, though we had our tech problems, but I was making sure like we looked like a legit company, not just some guy just coming in and thinking that, he was going to do a comic book. It was like, no, I tried to take this serious as I possibly could. And I wanted to show the audience that. So you had that. And then it was just obviously, you talked about backwards and some of the other things that I did. So at least I had an audience that could know about it. Right. So it was a combination of so many different things that it couldn't be done again. I don't think it could, anybody for that matter. If a new company just came by, I don't think that could be replicated. It was because the timing aspect. So it was like a perfect storm, lightning in a bottle. We caught it and we made it happen. And this is why it was so important for us to get things moving, because we knew that wasn't anything that was going to be like every like thing that we dropped was not going to make 3.7 million, not going to make $1 million for that matter. So we had to start making sure that we were catching on with that momentum and putting out other work and getting to work and making sure our like logistics were in order. We had to get another warehouse, all that stuff. We did that in that short period of time, so that now we're in a position now where, it's we're putting out so much material. So we have different buyers and they're buying at different points. Not everybody's buying day one, and all that. The buyer habits have started to make an adjustment. And it works out perfectly for us because that foundation was laid. And then that's a big shout out. It's a testament to really our team here at Rippersverse and the forward thinking individuals that we have here that are like, okay, this isn't the time to rest, right? We saw this success, and I turned all my part-time guys to full-time guys. And I'm like, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to do it right. And we got to work immediately. And we're just reaping the benefits now.
Yeah. Did it make you nervous at all when that number kept going up and up and up, and you're just like,
well, yeah, it did. And I think that a lot of people, I'm glad you asked that question. A lot of people don't understand that. I mean, the old saying, more money, more problems. It really is the truth, because when you're thinking, okay, I got a little small scale kind of campaign, maybe I sell a couple of thousand books and I'm good to go, right? Even a couple of thousand is a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So I went from thinking, though, that was the area that we were going to be in, to selling like 60,000 books. And so I'm not just thinking like, right. I'm not just thinking, well, we're seeing a lot of success. That number keeps going. I'm thinking, and that's my job, obviously, as the owner, a responsible one at least. Well, how am I going to get these books out to these customers? I got this smaller warehouse that, the square footage, I couldn't fit all the books in there. There was no way that I was going to be able to do that. So I'm scrambling. I got to get guys to work the warehouse, because now, again, thinking that me and my wife and a couple of the buddies that I pay some money to, we can just pack these orders. Now that turns into, you need a team. You need an entire team, and you need to get the supplies, and you got to get your ducks in a row with the shipping. And now I got to negotiate these deals with the parcel companies. Like, things changed like that, right? It changed, and we had to scale up in a very short amount of time, because I got to get these, because it was like 2 months, right? Where I got to scale my business up and get the books out at the same time. It was crazy. And I'm really impressed with how our team handled that. I mean, everybody knows this. I work every single day, weekends included, packing orders, right? I was there in that warehouse. I packed so many orders. I don't know how I packed that many orders, but we were able to get it done. I'm happy with how it turned out. And we did have to get immediately to work, because we were like, well, we need more space. I had to get another warehouse and stuff. But yeah, it was more problems that were created out of that we had to scale up and deal with. And it was just a laundry list of them. And I'm really impressed with how my team handled that.
Yeah. I like how you mentioned your wife, because my wife and I run multiple businesses together. And so, you just kind of bootstrap it together all the time. Like, we're always working together, doing this, going to that one, going to this. But like, I love where you're like, well, we thought it was going to kind of just be us doing it, and now we're like, oh crap, nope, that's not going to work. You know, that's awesome.
That's how it worked. And, you know, we laugh. Me and my wife laugh about that all the time. It's like, yeah, we thought that we were just going to be able to do it ourselves. And it's like, nah, not anymore. That dream faded. And I mean, immediately, there was no way that we could do that. So yeah. And more power to her. Love her to death. You know, she was a trooper as well. She supported me, along the way. And we still, though we added some team members, and that's immediately where I went to. I started like reaching out to people that I knew to help me build this thing. And I got to give a big shout out to all of those. Like, a lot of people know that, like Brenden, who you know, was my operations manager. He runs the warehouse now. It was a groomsman in my wedding, right? So happened to be surrounded by some awesome people. Talk about Backwards, you know, my financial operations guys, Alex, right? Who was the vocalist of the vocalist in Backwards. A video editor, one of our video editors, that especially on site video editors, Brian, a member of Backwards, right? So I immediately went to people that I knew. Now, granted, they had some experience there, in the job that they're filling, but I had to go to people that I knew first that were willing to say, I'll walk away from this job with, you know, big X company to go help my brother, get this stuff done. And man, blessings. I mean, because those guys really helped me out immediately. And we were able to get these books out, and also, again, just scale this business up. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, it's great to have that support system. And I was thinking about, so the first Isom was, you said about 60,000 books. Was that the first one?
Roughly, yeah. Like when it was all said and done, maybe not during the campaign window, but when it was all said and done, like after those months, it was around like it might have been like closer to 4. No, yeah, it was. It was closer to 50, 60 around there during that window, because it was more for like 42,000 total purchasers during that window. So yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. That makes me, so the town I'm from is only about 6,000 people. So I was thinking that math of like, oh, so you sold 10 times the amount of people where I live.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know? So
that's crazy. That's crazy to think about, man. It was nuts. I never, like, I mean, and then now to imagine just how much volume that we handle from day to day. Like, yeah, we're not going to, because we're releasing just way too often, have another $3.7 million like collection or campaign, but the volume is still the same, right? Because, you know, any given day you can sell 10,000. I mean, that's on an off day, $10,000 worth of just non-collection campaign items. It's just, and it's just so much stuff that's coming in and going out of the warehouse just every day. I mean, you think about even with Bloodroot, which we just finished. There is there. Right, we just finished that, which is crazy, on like a week. Not even, like, we finished that in a week, and that, you know, it's several thousand orders that were just associated with that went out like that. I mean, these guys got it down, man. They got it down pat. So, man, again, big shout out to the warehouse team, and how we had to learn a lot along the way of just scaling up.
Yeah, for sure. So you got Isom 1 out. So obviously, I'm guessing you had a plan for, you probably had the story of Isom 1, 2, 3 kind of at least in your head. When did you kind of go from like, okay, now I got these other characters, now I want to maybe bring in some other writers. Like, you start kind of like, okay, we could actually blow this up. You know?
Right. So initially, while I did have those aspirations to bring other people on, it was hard to conceptualize how quickly I was going to do that, or even be able to afford to do that, like, before we launched it. So I wrote Isom 1, and I had my universe Bible with all these entries for these various characters. And I introduced in that book in Isom 1, Yaira and Alpha Core. And so while I'm thinking that maybe I was going to be the writer for those, it was like, no, the audience demanded that, like, definitely when they saw Yaira, they demanded that stuff happen. But I'm also like doing all the Isom stuff at the same time. So, and I'm trying to run a business. So it happened pretty quickly where I'm like, I got to reach out to some guys. I got to reach out to some people, and it was a shot in the dark with a lot of it. Like, the Saskas doing Yaira, for example. I was a fan, and it's funny watching all that paper trail there because, when I was just a general consumer of comic books, I was reviewing their work with, and I was a huge fan. I became a fan of them organically. And then I reach out to them, shot in the dark, right? I'm like, cause I interviewed them for my show. Again, that was a shot in the dark thing that they were going to come on like that. And then, so I had that connection and I just said, I ain't got nothing to lose, right? Mm-hmm. What do you guys think? Would you do? I mean, they said yes, almost immediately.
That's awesome.
And, then eventually, it's Chuck Dixon, same thing. I mean, that's a legend. I'm like, well, again, might as well shoot high. If he says no, that's the worst thing that he could say. He says I'm in. Yeah. And so, I got them characters, obviously, to write that I knew they can handle, Chuck and all the stuff that he has done, as well as what the Saskas have been able to do. And I'm glad that they took it up and they got to work immediately and we got to work. But I mean, in all honesty, I was thinking I was going to be the one that was going to write those characters. It was going to be further down the line. And like I said, that all changed day one. It didn't take long where that changed immediately. And I was like, number one, you're not going to have the time to do it because you have a business to run. And then you're doing all this other stuff. So you can't take as much time. I can't sit there and be like, oh, I'll put out one book every year or two. Like, I can't do that. Those days, were going to be very short lived. If I thought that was what I was going to do, I did want to get to work pretty quickly. Me and Cliff were already kicking around Isom too, but yeah, with the other works and having those be able to be produced, because definitely with a book like, for example, Isom 2 is 112 pages. Well, that's going to take a while to do. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. So even if it was just going to be me, you're talking about drawing that out. But thankfully, we were able to get them involved. And, we've added obviously a team. We've got like Mike, Barron that did Good and Polymath. You have, Carol Brown, who's on my team, and she's done the latest Rippersverse story. So there's been an opportunity to add people to the team that can just do what they do best. And that's come up with great stories. Yeah, for sure. I just think that it's just so cool that you were so quickly able to be like, I'm going to let other people create in my world too. Because I think that's a lot of, people get really, you write a thing and you're like, this is like my baby. Right. And then you're just going to give it to a bunch of people. And I think it was cool that you were able to just be like, hey, come on in, like come to the playground, play around. And that also speaks to them as professionals. Because they knew that, these are characters that definitely the first characters that they did were all characters that I created. Now we have branched out with that. You have characters like, the Horseman, which was fully conceptualized by Joe Bennett and Chuck Dixon. But initially they, like Yaira, Alpha Core, these are characters that I created. And I had a lot of fun creating them. And I knew that I had to bring some people, not only that knew what they were doing, but also respected it enough to make it about that vision that I still had for them. And that's a testament to them as creators. Because a lot of people, and we've seen this especially in the mainstream, where they'll take something and then they make it about them. Oh, yeah. And it's basically a version of them. It's not the character speaking. Yeah. It's not trying to put that character that has that already established, like, sort of background and putting them in scenarios that are new and fresh. A lot of people don't do that, right? Well, but they were respectful enough. They were professional enough they wanted to ask those questions. When I had that first meeting, they both had these, notepads, and they're like, just taking notes. Okay, tell me about, character X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh, they're writing it down and stuff because they took it serious. So while I say this all the time, like, for example, Alpha Core, which was the first non Isom book that we released, that's very much a story that I couldn't come up with, but it's very much Brian Braxwell and Ingrid Valdez in those stories. So that speaks to them. A big shout out to Chuck and everybody else that were able to develop these concepts And I love that we gave them this fun sandbox because they were also able to create new characters that were fully conceptualized by them. So again, big shout out to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool that you just kind of reached out to him, because one of the kind of things I always have kind of lived by is the worst thing that happens is someone says no. So
That's
like,
it.
you might as well ask and see what happens.
If they say shoot for the stars, that's exactly what I did. I was like, they might say no. They're probably going to say no. But they didn't, thankfully. And it happens. It just, so that's I was shooting for the moon there, and thankfully they wanted to be a part of it. And I'm blessed to have them here, because also I've learned a lot from them. I mean, relatively speaking, especially when it comes to their careers, and also age wise, like I'm younger than them. And they're more accomplished in that sphere. Like both of them, the Saskas as well as, Chuck, they had been doing creative stuff, for a while. Like obviously Saskas not only did comic book stuff, that was in the mainstream, but they also obviously are filmmakers, right? So they had been there and done that. And everybody knows Chuck Dixon's been there and done everything, right? So I've learned a lot. I say that because I've learned so much, from them, with the Ripperverse, stuff and that we're doing, like just creatively even. And again, I'm blessed to be around them, blessed to be able to, especially like a Chuck Dixon, where I'm like, it's almost like a mentor, right? You learn a lot about how he does things. So I love that so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. So speaking of the film, so you guys kind of jumped into making that live action trailer real. I was so shocked to see that. I was like, holy cow, they're going like, the animated stuff was cool. I'm like, okay, this is awesome. And then you did the live thing. What made you go like, hey, let's just do it?
I mean, mainly because I wanted to dip my toes in it. Number one, I'm just like, I didn't make any of this stuff thinking that, I'm going to be able to, like, I don't know, just sell gangbusters. I can say that about the comic, right? The same thing can be said about the animations that we've done with Rippersverse Studios, as well as the live action stuff. And I love that people love what we've done there, and us dipping our toes with Rippersverse Studios into those elements of live action as well as animation. And I wanted to do it because I really wanted to see these characters come to life, and I also wanted to really support like the actual books, right? I wanted to be something that was not necessarily just a branching off, but to really like tell a different. Because, it's like whether they're dealing with film or animation, live action or what have you, there's only so much you can do on whatever medium as far as the story that you're telling. Okay. And what I wanted to do was, okay, what would it look like? What would an animated, which was the first thing that we did was Isom #2. What would an animated Isom look like? What would a live action Yaira look like? And we were able to entertain that stuff and just see how the audience felt about it. And both of those are concepts that we want to continue to invest in. It was fun. It was a learning experience for it. And obviously me having the Saskas helped out with the live action stuff, cause they've been there and done that. So, learning about being on those types of sets, in a more executive role. Like I've been on sets obviously before, I mean, especially and music and all the music videos that we had done in the past. Like I've been on set, but in that chair, it was different. And I learned a lot about that experience. So we just want to, with everything that the company does, I just want the audience to understand that this is something that I take very serious, that I'm very invested in. And one way to show that is to do other things than what we set out to do and trying to expand.
Yeah. Yeah, I just appreciate that. I think, you've just gone about things such a cool way of
Appreciate it.
I don't know if it's even going to work, but let's just try it and see what anyone, it's like just not having that fear of failing is just really, I mean, you have the fear of it, but you do it anyways, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way that I see it, I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, if there's nothing else that I could tell like these creators, it's like, just give it a shot. Because, and look, yes, there is a chance that something doesn't live up to maybe what you wanted it to. Maybe it, is, like you don't think is received as well. Maybe it's something that you do that. Yes, that can happen, but it's also part of the process. Like nobody bets 100 with anything. And that goes to the greats in any industry. Doesn't matter what that creative industry is. The best songwriters in the world that wrote songs that weren't received well by the audience. Best singers, best artists, best, yes, there's stories that people didn't like that Jack Kirby did, right? Like it happens. Or like, as far as an artist is concerned, or that Stan Lee wrote, or like it doesn't, yes, that can happen, and you need to be prepared for that and understand. That's why I say just give it a shot so you can prepare yourself. I came from the music business, so it wouldn't have hurt my feelings at all if I put out something and somebody said, well, I don't like Isom, like whatever. Like I'm not going to lose sleep over that at all because I wrote songs that people didn't like. I've been doing this for very long. So it's going to happen. But you also can have what happened with the Ripperverse, where it is something that just blows up and people are interested in it. Like that can also happen. So you might as well give it a shot, and don't fear that you might not succeed initially. Like that, I just say give it a shot. Go for it.
Yeah, yeah. I had a discussion with someone not even that long ago about we were working on a creative project for something, and I was like, I've been a creative a long time, so you're not going to hurt my feelings. Like, just say whatever you got to say so we can make this the right thing, And I think that's, especially I would say to like anyone who they're on the fence of like even starting their creative project of like for rejection or failure or whatever you may be thinking. It's like if you never do it, that'll be worse than trying it and failing,
Right. Agreed. And 1000%, you got to. I mean, and that's just, I think as a creator, you have to approach it that way. I think this is why a lot of people, especially that cross into like the main or cross over from like the mainstream, when I say mainstream, I'm just referring to like the old guard standard of doing X entertainment thing, right? A lot of people have a hard time going from that to being like independent because there's a lot more harsh realities that mammoth sort of shielded you from. And that direct feedback is one of them, right? When you're working like in the Hollywood or whatever, they commission you to do your job and then that's it. Even if people like reject what it is that you produced, you got your bread. The buck doesn't necessarily stop with you. There's all these other people that are involved that the blame could be passed to. But when you're doing something independently, it doesn't work like that, right? It's like you put something out and you're getting that direct feedback with that audience, and the buck stops with you. If you are an independent, you can't really fall back on that mega corporation. So that's why I'm saying no matter where you come from, if you came from that side or you're just a newbie just trying to do things your way, it's part of the game. And the quicker you can realize that and the quicker you give it a shot, the better you can improve. Like we've had some duds obviously happen with the Rippeverse as far as like even just technically how our website works, right? There's L's that we've taken there with functionality, a problem that we for sure had. And we've had to take that on the chin and move on, just like anybody that's doing some work salt would do. But you get to learn from it, right? You get to say, okay, well, that's just not how you do things. There's so much stuff that I've done as part of this process, both creatively, as well as, with the business side of it. It's tough. And I've done a bunch of things and it's like, oh, well, it didn't quite work. And I don't have to keep doing it. I can just say, all right, well, let's change it. Let's try to do a better version of it. And, that's why the quicker you can just put stuff out, the quicker you can make an adjustment. And that to me, it should be your approach.
Yeah. Well, and we're kind of getting into the criticism area, and you've definitely had your fair share of that.
No shortage of it.
No shortage of it. I remember, I don't do a whole lot of this, but I remember one of the first times I saw maybe it was after I got Isom 2 or something. I saw someone posted something about it being a grift or something.
Yeah.
And I just responded and I was like, I mean, you can not like the product, but like I still ordered it and received it. So it's not, like, whatever.
Yeah,
so how do you deal with, I mean, you have a lot of pressure in that area. We have a lot of criticism. So how do you deal with some of that stuff?
It's like you have to be able to, I think every creator has to be able to part of, I guess, definitely as a business owner, right? You have to be able to understand what is going to be legitimate and what's just noise.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of creators make the mistake of trying to hear everything out that just some of it's noise, right?
Right.
Some of it is legit. And whether they like you or not isn't really contingent on that. Some of that stuff may be legit, but there's others that's just like, it's meant to distract you. It's meant to pull you into some pit of like lack of productivity, or it's meant to try to demoralize you. It's meant to have you quit. And you got to be able to separate that and understand what's useful to you versus what's just a bunch of noise that you kind of got to just let that roll off and get back to work and try to refine what you do. So the thing that I love about how we go about it, like the Soxers always joke about how I'm the most scrutinized man at comics, all the time, because it's like I can breathe in a certain way and then it's a problem. Right.
Right.
And I love that it's me, number one, because I can handle it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But also other creators get to see that. And I don't want them to get discouraged, though that sucks that some people do see what we experience and they're like, man, I don't want to have to go through all of that. The good news is 9 times out of 9, you're not. It's not going to be, yes, you're going to deal with people that are going to say things about you. They may be harsh in what they say to you, but it's not going to be to the level of what I experienced. For the most part, let me say this. What I've experienced is the absolute worst of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it can't get worse than that. So you can see how to deal with that type of stuff. And I'm not saying just replicate kind of how I approach things. Not everybody's me. Not everybody's meant to be me. But don't quit for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like that shouldn't be an option. But also a talent. It is a key talent, because it's one thing for some because you have those that's noise, right? To your point, someone is saying this is all a grift, this is fake. That's noise, right? It's not like I have no reason to listen to that. But then if you have like a customer that's like, oh, well, like they're actually a fan, right? Not just someone just trying to make content, but like, someone that's a fan. They're like, well, I really like X about this thing, about this book, right? And a lot of the books, for example, that have titles now came from the fan feedback, right?
Yeah.
When like a character like Bloodruth gets her own book after her introduction, that happens because the customers and their feedback and things that they said. So it was like, I really like that character, or I'd prefer to see that character than I would see Isom. So it's like, I take that and I'm like, okay, we need to green light that thing, or we need to do X thing because there's a fan base for it and they're demanding it and they're gravitating towards it, right?
Yeah.
So it's useful, the criticism, there's useful feedback, and then there's the noise. And you have to understand the difference between it. You got to understand that immediately, lest you, again, risk being unproductive, risk trying to fight off a bunch of nonsense, or risk being completely demoralized because you feel like there's just, you're just hated. And look, it is a way to go about it. But most people aren't going to get it much worse than I have. And I love that.
Well, that's, my YouTube channel is on a much smaller scale than everything you're doing. But I remember the first time you get that mean comment is always like, ooh, it stinks a little.
Yeah.
But then I remember, or I have multiple videos where it's like, I have a comment. This one says, I love this video. It's so great. You did a great job. And the one right below it is like, this is the worst thing ever. Why did you?
It's the complete opposite, right?
Yeah.
It's on and that's what I'm talking about what's useful, right? Mm-hmm. So, like I got to look at that, right? And this is what I'm always proposing to people who insist that you must listen to everything. It's like, who do I listen to? Do I listen to the fan that was like, I love this character, I want to see more of them, or do I listen to the one that may just be noise, right? And they're like, oh, this sucks. This is the worst thing whatsoever. You can't say that both of those are equally valid, right? Because they're both different concepts. So while you do need to make sure that you're able to get that feedback and get that criticism, you also have to remember what's useful. You have to be able to analyze the market properly. It's like what people are saying more of that are actually buying and investing in it. All that stuff is a talent and requires you to really get in the trenches and analyze. But yeah, like you'll see that, and anybody on YouTube, that's a prime example how not everything is the same. And so you get someone saying, oh, this is awesome. I love for you to do content like this. And the next comment might be, this is the worst thing ever. This sucks. Don't ever do it again. So it's like, okay, you got to try to figure out which is useful, right?
Yeah.
And so,
well, and then, I mean, in your case, like the data is more important in my opinion. So like,
oh yeah,
you're clearly still selling comic books despite people saying like they're no good or whatever. So like there's the haters saying the thing really loudly, but then you're still selling tens of thousands of comic books all the time.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And that's the beauty also about having that, being able to control your distribution, making the customer buyer experience, unique. And, we have like this membership stuff that we're trying to do with the Rippeverse as well to really, try to be able to even directly get that feedback even more so. And that's what's important. It's like the data is the data, right? So we know what's selling. We know what's not selling. We know what's selling more. We know how our buyer habits are, how they trend. Alex is always analyzing this, like, because for example, when we sped up our release schedule, naturally the buyer habits change, and we knew how to analyze that. You have a lot of people that buy posts, like we sold like from the night that Yaira, for example, Yaira number 2 closed down its pre-order window. We sold 300 copies the next morning, right? So it's like, and then Bloodroot starts shipping. Bloodroot sales go up, right? Because people are starting to get that feeling. They're like, oh, I can just order it in the store and get it tomorrow. So buyer habits start to adjust. So you have to be able to analyze that and understand what's useful versus what's not. And that's this game. That's this comic game, really, in any game. You know it. You're a business owner. It's constantly looking at like that feedback and then making adjustments and pivoting when you can to better improve the business itself. That's what this game is all about. Just 'cause you did something, one thing, number one, doesn't mean that it's going to work the next time you do it. And it doesn't mean that there isn't a better option out there for that, or the market, like, it's just changed. And it happens all different with technology. Things change so much, man. So you're always having to pay attention, to that. And data is one of the things. I'm a nerd for that type of stuff. This is usually what I'm doing. Like, especially late at night, I'm going and looking at, okay, how much we sold? Okay, we sold this much on this day. What are most of those books? We have them properly tagged. So I'm looking at digital marketing numbers, like, okay, how much of this type of ad we ran here? It got this much in feedback. Average customer was of this demographic. They were spending this much, and because we have our devs in order and our dev work is in order, and we have the pixels set up correctly, we can see like, okay, X amount of people saw this ad, they clicked on this ad, and it turned into purchases of this amount. Like, we can see all of that data, and we're constantly analyzing that. And then we make adjustments based on it. Maybe that I take that ad, information I got from that ad, and I make yet another adjustment. And that's what this business is. And that's the beauty of being independent as well. And small business owners can for sure feel me on that you can just pivot. It's hard to do that when you like are a mega multinational billion-dollar corporate. You're like trying to turn like a mammoth, and it's just so hard to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I remember seeing a post one time. Someone, I think it was around, I don't know if it was Isom 2 or Yaira. One of them came out, and it didn't make $3 million like Isom 1 did. And people were like, yeah, I saw some comments about like, well, it's not doing great or whatever. And I saw immediately what's going on. I was like, okay, well, they're selling the books for a smaller price point. That's one they're still selling a good amount of books. Like there's all these different layers to it that factor into your decision. So it's not just about like, we're going to sell this for maximum price point to get to that,
Always improving on the pricing like that. Looking at it at the surface, if you just try to find something wrong, you look at that and you say, well, it's over. They just because, instead of making 3, they made 1 million. It's like, even with like, we've released in the last, I can't tell you how many just from November, right? 4 months, how much material that we've dropped. And not only just started shipping between Bloodroot. We got the Trinity Volume 1, and we have all these art books, art of like Will Conrad, then the Ira number 2, and now we have like 3 active ones with Isom 3 and everything. And between sure, none of those are because of the way that they're set up. Some of the pricing, like Yara 2, Yara 1 was what, like 30, no, that was the cheapest that we came with at the time, but you get the base book for like, I think 25 bucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yara 2 is 13 at base, right? So the price is different. And again, we're releasing more material. So our buyers are going to gravitate. It's not just one title anymore, right? It used to be just Isom. So anybody that wanted your material, that's the only thing they had available. Now people are like, well, maybe I don't like Isom as much, but I'm a big Alpha Core guy. Like I like that. And that's the one that they're keeping up with. So the buyer habits are changing. We're still moving tens of thousands of books, right? Yeah. But the buyer habits have started to sort of make an adjustment, and that's all type of like data that you get to analyze as a business owner, that you have to understand. Like, look, it's a different game from it might not be a $3.7 million success, but we made basically in 2 months $1 million. I think that's okay for a company that's small.
I think you're doing great. I think that's going to work out.
That's just on collections, right? That's not including the day-to-day store sales of somebody that is still to this day going to buy Isom #1. You know, like it's so much to take into consideration. And that's also fun for me. Like I nerd out about that type of stuff, looking at, we sold in this month, we sold 500 Isom ones. It's like, that's really cool. That obviously that campaign ended 2.5 years ago, but people are still new fans, new customers, and that's data that you get to analyze as well. Who are the return customers? Who are the new ones, like first time buyers? All that stuff is fun, and all that stuff must be analyzed and also put into perspective, to bring this conversation back home, put into perspective so you can determine the health of your company.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. So what are, so if you were to look at this, like in 10 years, where, like, cause you talk about, so you got, the Marvels and the DCs that are these massive, huge companies. You're talking about how it's hard for them to pivot because they're so huge. So say 10 years down the road, you're even bigger than you are now. How do you want to how are you going to try to maintain that ability to pivot as you grow?
Yeah. Fantastic question, because like I'm going to be the sole owner forever. As far as I'm concerned, if it gets to a point to where, I end up having children or something and they get involved, like whatever. But at the end of the day, the book's going to stop with me, health willing, Lord willing. And I want to maintain that attitude of a small business. So it doesn't mean that I don't want to take on opportunities. It doesn't mean that we don't want to grow. We for sure want to do that. But you can have that small business mindset and keeping things lean as possible. And that's the benefit that you get to have by not being mega corporate, and by having that sole owner, and by not having all these middle folk that are involved in it, investors. And I'm not knocking anybody that goes that route, but we don't have to deal with any of that. So even as much as we've grown right now, we have all these other titles. Now we have Rippersverse, right? And now Rippersverse dealing, we're teaming up with Angel Studios right now with Gabriel and the Guardians.
That's so awesome. So cool.
Yeah. And it's like, who would have thought? Right. So it's already got to a point to where things are just crazy. But it's still lean. It's still a slim team that is, handling work. Yes, we grow when we need to, especially in that warehouse, right? I got to have workers in there. We got to make sure that we're putting books out as fast as we can. And it takes a lot of work, and we love it, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay if it means keeping it in the house and keeping my hands on it. So in 10 years from now, I want to grow all those aspects of the company. So you have the main line Ripperverse. I want to grow Rippersverse. I want to grow Rippeverse Studios. I want to by then hopefully have some more fleshed out, longer form animated stuff. Maybe dipping our toes into some more live action stuff. I want to grow. I want to scale up, but not so much that it means like, we can't pivot anymore, or selling off the company or something like that, or selling off a percentage of the company, which often you see with guys in my position. They get in, they start getting those investors and other people because they want that. And look, I understand why that's attractive, right? Definitely when you have that initial success, you got all eyes on you, and bam, you're going high, and people are like, I want in on it, right? And it's like, oh, you're gonna get this opportunity, and wow, you give off 50% of your company, but this is going to manifest itself into X, Y, and Z. And I understand why that stuff is attractive, but I'd rather have the slow and controlled, slower, not necessarily slow, but slower and controlled growth than trying to just get there for the sake of getting there, because it is important to maintain our ethics that we have as a business, and growing and scaling up, and making sure that we're taking our customers and our original vision in mind with everything that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. That, speaking of code of ethics, that was, when I remember opening the first book, I think I got Isom was the first one, and seeing that actually printed in the book. And I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Just that you're just openly like, this is the stand we're taking. This is how we're, I thought it was great. Loved it.
Yeah. That's, I wanted a standard that people could hold us to, right? You will know the company is compromised if for some reason the ethics aren't there anymore that we wanted to stand for. And I wanted to set that tone. It keeps myself in check. It keeps all the writers in check. It keeps everybody with this business in check. And it gives that standard to the audience of what to expect, what this company stands for. And they can make a decision on whether or not that this is something that they want to get into. And we're very transparent about who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I've, when I get people come into the store and they're maybe they've never been into comics before, they don't know where to start or whatever, they're like, where do I start? And I'm like, honestly, at this point, just literally grab any comic on this rack and start reading it. Because if you try to go back to figure out the whole story, it's literally impossible. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
It's been
we need a dry erase board
rechanged.
that goes across the whole room, and it'd be almost impossible.
Yeah. That's the, I remember, when Marvel movies were actually good and, starting out and big, and people, when they'd complain about oh, the movie doesn't really follow the comics. I'm like, the comics don't even follow the comics. They
not
don't,
anymore, unfortunately.
They're all over the place.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong about that at all.
Yeah. So I just appreciate that. People come in and they look at a Rippaverse book, and I'm like, you can start with this one. This is a good place to jump in. So
appreciate that. Much love.
That's
Thank
cool.
you.
So we're coming up on an hour, and so any kind of, I always like to wrap everything up with if you had 2 or 3 kind of things that you would want to tell another indie creator, what would those things be? If they're just starting out or trying to get into things.
Right. Well, we talked about some of that, and to me, it's just giving it a shot. It's so important. Just try, because you don't know what you don't know. But it's a very exciting time. And the reason I say that is because now more than ever, people are hungry for non-traditional avenues as far as how they get their entertainment and what it is entertaining them in the first place. So with that, while I do want you to give it a shot, you don't have to go in blind. There's so much information out there nowadays, and make your whatever business, it doesn't matter what you're creating, comics, music, doesn't matter. Make sure that you tailor make that model, whatever that economic model, that creative model that you have, to what you can do, what your strengths are, and where you want to be. Don't get in the habit of, looking at, you want to do all the research. You can see what others are doing. Absolutely. But don't fall into that trap of trying to just repeat what other people did just because they did it. Because in often cases, context matters. And maybe there's something that they did that you can't simply replicate, or maybe there's something that they do that's inefficient. And you could do a better version of that that's tailor-made for you and your customers as well. So do your research, try to make sense of this. I tell this, it's not necessarily a story, it's just what happened. When I started the Ripperverse, I went and reached out to everybody that I could that was at least in the industry of comics. You'd be surprised the amount of contradictory information that you get, number one, and you'd be surprised the amount of bad advice that you get, right? Where for me, how I approach business is something has to make sense And someone has to be able to communicate that to me and make that make sense. If you cannot do that, or rather, if your explanation for doing said thing is it's just what these people are doing, it's just what the industry standards are, that's not good enough. And so I won't do it. Like, Rippersverse doesn't happen. Rippaverse, as far as its core model, doesn't happen. If I'm listening to the people that say, I got to go through X distributor, I have to go through, you should go through that. You should house your web, instead of hosting your own website on your own servers, instead of doing that, why don't you go on whatever platform, right? Mm-hmm. And I entertained it for sure. Sure. I couldn't make sense of it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't make sense of it. I'm looking at it, and it's platform fees. It's all the other thing. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. So I'm just not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I did it. It did. And some people felt some kind of way about it. But I like to think now we got things figured out enough to where people know I know a little bit about what I'm doing here. And mm-hmm. I think that needs to be the attitude of every independent creator. And it's not, when I say that, maybe there's something that I do that you might think you can do or is more efficient. Then make that make sense for you. Put a plan in action and go execute. But don't just go through the motions, and make sure you're doing your research. And don't be afraid to pivot when you do something and it doesn't work. You thought it was, but it didn't work. And you're like, yeah, I'll give it. Okay. You don't have to keep doing it just because everybody else is doing it, especially. Sure. Make an adjustment and, again, tailor make that experience for yourself and what you're trying to accomplish, what your aspirations are. That's the last thing I can leave people with. Like, everybody wants to go different places, and you shouldn't try to force other people's aspirations onto yourself. If that's not where you want to be and that's not where you want to go, that's not where you want to go. And that's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate it. To kind of echo what you said, I think, not that everyone should go out and copy everything you've done, but that you're showing people that it can be done. And I think that is very important. So I just really appreciate everything you guys are doing, and I have enjoyed it a ton myself. So just really grateful. Appreciate you. Love it. So thank you. Much love. And I appreciate you so much, man, as well as your support for the Rippeverse, man. Much love. Thank you so much. Yeah. So where can we find you? Where are all the socials and all that hoopla? Well, it's the Ripperverse on X, Ripperverse.com. Obviously, you can get all the information that you need on there, and usually Ripperverse on all other forms of social media. But Ripperverse.com is your one-stop shop. If you want to follow me, usually my socials are Eric D. July, EricDJuly. But I'd rather you just keep up with the Ripperverse. And again, thanks to all the new customers that at least give us a shot. Even if you just look it over, we appreciate you so much. We got character profiles, all that good stuff over at Rippersverse.com. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for watching. This has been Eric July. Just really grateful that he was on the show with us today. And so thanks so much. We'll see you next time.